G'day, I'm John Nichols and this is Humans for Nature, the channel that looks at the fun, the interesting and very serious side of global warming. Now, for this Wednesday's video, I would like to discuss the Tesla 3 that I've now owned for 12 months and talk about the interesting things I've found and what I enjoy about it and what I get out of owning such a car and what I think you should get out of owning the car. But firstly, I'd like to take this opportunity to answer a question put forward by Rob, who lives in Melbourne. Now, he wanted to know if I'd ever done a cost analysis between a petrol car and an electric car with regards to the costing. Now, I thought a good way I could do this is if I'd look at a trip we did recently about 6-7 months ago before the problems, and we went from Sydney down the east coast to Melbourne and then up the inland route back to Sydney, and we did about 2,200 kilometres, 2,200 kilometres. So that would be a very good idea of how we organised ourselves. And now I did a 4-series post on my Facebook page about this trip, and you might like to look at it, and if so, you can find it on John and Jan Nichols authors, and I'll put a link, or I'll just put a note on this video about it. Now, we can start from there. Firstly, the costs involved were when we visited Superchargers. They're a Tesla-owned organisation, and they're the only car company that's got one, but there are other Superchargers around. They're getting more frequently all the time. Now, there were, other than the Superchargers, everything else is free. So in other words, if you look at the way we charged, I mean, we charged at hotels, and we charged at friends' homes. Now, they're all free, because hotels these days are getting more and more frequent where they're installing destination charges, as they call them, as an introduction to their hotel. It's like a promotional tool they use, and I went from one destination charger to another, and they're recommended by Tesla. So that worked out. So if you look at that point of view, they're a good way of going. So much so that the first time on that trip that we used a supercharger was when we were in Melbourne, at the suburb of Richmond. That was the first time. So let's take it from there. Now, our first night out from Sydney, we stayed at Bannister's in Mollymook. It's about 250 kilometres. They also have another one in Port Stephens. We enjoy both of them, and we enjoy the restaurants, which are owned by Rick Stein, who's quite well known as you. And so we stayed there and we enjoyed that. They're really good stops. Now, the interesting thing is that at Mollymook, they've got 2 destination chargers, and they're 3-phase. That means if they're 3-phase, instead of getting 50 kilometres per hour of charging on a 3-phase, you get 70 kilometres. So they're quite interesting. At the home here, I've only got single phase, so I get 50 kilometres. Now, one of those I noticed was a Zappi. Now, the Zappi is an English-built, British-built charger, and it's got some very interesting features. I think if I didn't own a Tesla and was given a charger, I would be going for a Zappi. Now, I think I might explain that in my next video, which will be in a couple of weeks' time. Now the next stop, the following day, we drove down to our friends, Roz and Fred, who've got a lovely, well, they used to have 40 acres, they've got 20 now, and they live on the waterfront just north of Bermagui, and it's a beautiful home. We stayed there with them for 2 nights, and we just used an ordinary, plugged in to the ordinary system that they've got, and that was quite good. I mean, and I think I worked out that would have cost them on their electricity bill, that would have probably added $3 to $4 for us being there and charging the car once, so it wasn't a problem. Now our next stop was the lakes at a place called Gypsy Point, and it's just into Victoria, and it's about 186 kilometres from Bermagui. Now they have 2 destination charges, and it really is the most beautiful place. They don't have a restaurant, but it's a beautiful place. While we were there, we drove the 20 kilometres into the spot there where some of the worst bushfires in Victoria happened, and people were stranded, and we had a look at that. There was some pretty interesting devastation, which I'm going to spin into the Victorian government are going to look into that. So the next day we drove into Lakes Entrance, which is about 188 kilometres, and we stayed at a caravan park there, quite pleasant near the water, and we had quite a good time there, and we used their charger, not a problem. The last day before arriving in Melbourne, we stayed at Manses on Raymond, which is a very interesting place, and they had 1 destination charge, and then it was about the next run was 107 kilometres into Melbourne, where we went to a supercharger that is in the suburb of Richmond, and we actually visited that supercharger while we were staying in Melbourne 3 times. The only reason we used that supercharger in Richmond was because our friends had loaned us or let us use their beautiful unit in a 20-storey block on the river in Melbourne, and we thought it was great. And the problem there was the parking below was beautiful, but there wasn't any plugs. There were no sockets for ordinary 240 volt. There were no sockets. They were in such obscure places it wasn't possible. So we decided that we certainly weren't going to turn around to our friends, "I'm sorry, we can't stay here, you haven't got any plugs." We weren't going to do that. So we decided we'd go to Richmond, and we went there, as I said before, 3 times, and but there was nothing wrong with that. It was a beautiful charger. It's the only time I've ever been to a supercharger, and all 4 bays have been full. Most places 6 bays, sometimes 8, but I've been there twice and they were full, but didn't have to wait very long. And the great thing with superchargers is when you get on them, it's only 15 to 20 minutes to charge your car. It really is a terrific system. So, and I've included a photograph here so you'll see what our friend's home looked like, and well, it was one of their homes. So it was really lovely and enjoyed it, and Kelly and her 2 boys flew up and they joined us for 2 days. So it was it's an interesting place, and we enjoyed being in the centre of Melbourne and dined out every night we were there, so it was great fun. It looks like I'm going to have to finish this on the next Wednesday in 2 weeks' time, mainly because I've sort of run out of time. I intended to answer this question, but it's got a little bit of time, and so I'll do the second half of the trip plus the final costing, which is what it really was all about. I'll do that next week. because I try to keep these videos within 10 to 12 minutes, and I like to try and include a serious segment, which so we'll have to call it a day. But what I'd like to do is finish this with a story. Now, Kelly, my daughter being Kelly, she ordered 2 child seats when she came to Melbourne, had them delivered to our unit, and we were able to use them when we did a trip down to down the coast. We went from Melbourne down to near a place near Fingal, and it's about 100 kilometres, and we went to Peninsula Hot Springs, which is really quite an interesting place to go, and we had a great day. But on the way down, I decided to give the boys a demonstration. And it's amazing how children, they're 7 and 4, mainly the 7-year-old, but I often get stopped, or kids will say, go Tesla, and they're very interesting. And of course, the boys knew about the acceleration of the Tesla. So it was on the way down this trip, I found an open spot in the road, and I turned round, and I didn't turn around, I actually said to them, okay boys, I'm going to give you a demonstration, but I'm only going to do it once, so please don't ask me to do it again. And they all stopped and went silent, and then I put my foot down. Well, Kelly screamed, the boys screamed, there was excitement as the car accelerated like no other car I've ever owned. And I've done this a few times as a tester, but I limit the amount of times I use it, but it's a terrific advantage to have it when you do need it. But it just took off. I mean, I've had a few fancy cars in my time, but nothing has ever accelerated like an electric car. It's also very quiet, and it just goes, it just takes off. It's the power and the energy in a torque in an electric motor is amazing. You have to drive one to believe it. And we had a great day, but all the way home and all through that time, that day, while we were driving, they'd say to me, oh, Pop, please do it again, Pop, please do it again. But I ignored them. So, until the next Wednesday, in 2 weeks' time, I'd just like to say g'day and goodbye.